This week, I've been thinking a lot about volume. Not just sales volume, not just listing volume, not just how many cards are moving. I mean the kind of volume that sounds good when people talk about it, but can start to feel a lot different when it's 9:30 at night and there are still stacks of orders waiting to be packed. I've been hearing more and more sellers talk about the grind of shipping high volume, low margin orders. And believe me, I get it. Low-end card selling can absolutely become a grind. But when I hear someone say they spent all night shipping 50 or 60 orders, my first thought isn't that low-end cards can't work. My first thought is actually, does the system match the strategy? How is the inventory sorted? How clean is the packing process? How many decisions are being made during fulfillment? And then maybe the bigger question, is the product mix forcing too many low-margin orders just to make the day worthwhile? Because more orders are not always the answer. Sometimes the answer is better systems. And sometimes the answer is better inventory. And yet sometimes the answer is adding enough margin to the business so every day does not depend on stuffing as many envelopes as possible. This week gave me examples from both sides. I had coupon orders, I had repeat low-end sales, I had SI for Kids cards starting to move. I had quantity Shohei Ohtani cards selling from a show buy. I had a bad sales day that reminded me not to overreact. And I had one major consignment sale that showed the complete other side of the business. So today, we're talking about volume, systems, product mix, and why more orders are not always the answer. Welcome to my so-called card life, the podcast where we talk about what actually happens when you try to run a real card business, the decisions, adjustments, and lessons that don't show up in highlight reels. Welcome to my so-called card life, an inside look at the life of a low-end card reseller. Brought to you by JC3 Cards and Collectibles, a premier reseller of trading cards available today on eBay, Collects, and whatnot. Whether you're looking to fill out that new set or just rekindle memories with one of your favorite players from your favorite teams, let JC3 Cards and Collectibles help you find that card you're looking for and provide fast, secure delivery straight to your door. I want to start by saying this clearly. The shipping grind is real. I don't want this episode to sound like I'm dismissing sellers who feel buried by fulfillment. If you're selling low-end cards at high volume, the work is real. The envelopes are real, the labels are real, the sorting is real, the searching is real, and the mistakes are real. The missing inventory is also real, and that makes the fatigue real. And if you're doing this after a full day of work, after family obligations, after everything else life throws at you, then 50 or 60 orders can absolutely feel like a mountain. So I'm not saying people are wrong to feel the grind. What I am saying is that when the grind becomes the normal state of the business, that's when we have to start asking better questions. Because there's a difference between a busy night and a broken process. There's a difference between having a strong sales day and having a business model that requires chaos to make money. And with low-end selling, that difference matters. Low-end fulfillment has to be boring, repeatable, and fast. That's not glamorous, and it's not exciting. It's not the part people post about. But that is where the margin lives. When you're selling a $1.99 card, a $2.25 card, a $3.49 card, or even a small coupon order, there's only so much room for wasted time. Every decision eats the margin. If you spend 5 minutes looking for the card, the profit is already under pressure. If you spend another 2 minutes deciding how to package it, the profit is under even more pressure. If you have to stop and find card savers, tape, envelopes, sleeves, or labels, the profit continues to be under even more pressure. If you discover condition issues during packing that should have been caught during listing, now the order is not just slow, it becomes a customer service issue. And that is when the low-end selling starts feeling worse than it has to feel. For me, when I'm focused, a basic single card order is usually about a 90-second task. That's not me claiming I have the best system in the world, because I certainly do not. I'm always looking for more improvements on it. There's still parts of my process that I want to make better. And yes, there's still times where I lose time searching. And other times yet where I look at my setup and I think, this could be cleaner. But when the system is working, a single card order should not feel like a custom project. Find the card, verify the card. Sleeve, card saver, envelope, label. And then move on. Multi-card orders take longer, of course. My rough working number is about 90 seconds for the first card, and then maybe another minute for each additional card, depending on how easy the cards are to find. So if someone tells me 50 or 60 basic low-end orders took all night, I don't immediately hear low-end cards are impossible. I hear something might be slowing the system down. Something could be inventory sorting, or it could be the packing station. Maybe it's supplies or the printer. Maybe it's the listing process, or maybe it's missing inventory. It might be too much decision making, and maybe it's simply that the product mix requires too many tiny transactions for the time you have available. That's the question. Not whether low-end cards can work. The question is whether the system is actually built for low-end cards. So let's talk about the system side first. When fulfillment feels too slow, I think there are a few questions worth asking. First, is the inventory sorted in a way that matches how the orders are picked? And I know that sounds simple, but it's a huge point. If the card sells on eBay and then the seller has to go digging through random boxes, old stacks, loose piles, or vague categories, then the system is already fighting the sale. The card might have sold for $2.25, but now the seller is spending real time hunting for it, and time is not free. One missing card can destroy the rhythm of an entire shipping session. A 90-second order becomes a 10-minute search. And then frustration builds. Then mistakes become more likely. Then the seller starts feeling like the sales are the problem, when maybe, just maybe, the real issue is that the inventory location system is not strong enough for the order volume. Second, are the supplies staged? When it's time to ship, the shipping station should not require a scavenger hunt. Sleeves should be ready, card savers should be ready, envelopes should be there, tape should be readily available, labels and the printer should be ready, and a scale should also be handy. If every order requires reaching into a different drawer and searching for another supply, clearing off a workspace, or reloading something that should have been prepared earlier, that time adds up fast. Low-end selling does not forgive that very well. Third, is the process repeatable? This is where I think a lot of margin gets lost. If every order requires a new decision, the seller is paying for that decision with time. Should this go in this type of envelope or that type of envelope? Should I add a freebie? Which freebie? Where are the freebies? Should I use a top loader? Should I use a card saver? Is this 1 ounce or 2 ounces? Do I need to check condition again? Can this go eBay standard envelope, or did it cross over into Ground Advantage? Now, some of those decisions are necessary, but the more of them you can solve ahead of time, the faster the actual order work becomes. That's why I keep coming back to this line. The enemy of low-end fulfillment is decision making. The sale already happened. At shipping time, the process should simply be execution. Pick it, verify it, pack it, label it, move on. Fourth, are you discovering problems too late in the process? And this one really matters. If the first real condition check happens during packing, fulfillment will always be slower. And I've had this happen. You pull the card, look at it under better light, and suddenly there's a surface issue you don't like to see. Now the order turns into a decision. Do you cancel the order with the buyer? Do you message them about the issue? Do you refund the card and send it anyway? Or do you replace it if you have another copy? Do you eat the loss? That's sometimes part of the business, and it will happen. But if it happens too often, the issue may likely be upstream. The listing process has to catch as much as possible before the card ever sells. Because the shipping process is not where you want to be making condition decisions on low margin inventory. And finally, fifth, is the inventory being prepared for future use or just dumped into the next available space? That brings me to one of the projects I started this week. I started doing some liquidation boxes by team. And let me tell you, this is not glamorous work. Nobody's going to make a motivational movie about sorting low-end cards by team. But it's work that matters. And there are a couple reasons I want this done. The first is immediate. When I pack orders, if I see an opportunity for a theme, I sometimes like to add a couple themed freebies when it makes sense. For example, if I know somebody's a Yankees fan or a Bears fan, or they bought a bunch of a certain sport, it's nice to be able to grab something that actually matches. But if all the extra inventory is just sitting in random liquidation boxes, that quick buyer friendly touch becomes harder than it should be. Second reason for that is future facing. If I eventually do more live selling, especially any kind of team request format, I don't want to be digging blindly while people are watching. Someone asks for Bears, Yankees, Packers, Dodgers, Cowboys, Brewers, whoever it may be. I want to be able to move quickly. And that does not happen by accident. That comes from the boring prep work before the format ever needs it. So that team sorting project is really a system building project. It's labor today with the intent of a future payoff. And that is the kind of work that doesn't always show up immediately in sales numbers, but it can make the business easier to operate later. Because if every order feels like a custom project, the system is not ready for low margin volume. And if every future sales channel creates more chaos, the system is not ready for expansion. But systems are only half of this. The other half is product mix. Because sometimes the issue is not just that fulfillment is slow. Sometimes the issue is that the business model is asking too much from the fulfillment system. If your entire store depends on low dollar, low margin, high volume sales, then you need a system that can handle that. If the system can't handle it, the business starts fighting itself. This is the line I keep coming back to. If you need 60 orders to make the day work, but 60 orders breaks your night, the business model is fighting itself. That doesn't mean low-end selling is bad. Obviously, I sell a lot of low-end cards. A huge part of my store is built around low-end inventory. I like cart builders, and I like coupon orders. I especially like repeat buyers, and I like turning bulk and show buys into steady sales. I like the idea that a card someone else might ignore can still become part of a real business if it's bought right, listed right, priced right, and shipped efficiently. But I also know low-end selling has a ceiling if the product mix is not balanced. If every dollar of profit requires another envelope, another label, another pick, another pack, and another piece of inventory leaving the system, eventually time becomes the bottleneck. And that is where the margin lane matters. For me, I think about the business in two broad lanes. The first is the volume lane, and that's the low dollar inventory, the cart builders, the coupon friendly cards, cards that work best when buyers build multi-card orders. cards that can move through eBay standard envelope. The cards where speed and repeatability matter more than squeezing every last cent out of the listing. That lane can work, but it has conditions. The cards have to be easy to find, and they have to be fast to ship. You have to buy them right and price them in a way that supports the promotion strategy. And ideally, they encourage buyers to add more than one card to the cart. A single $1.99 card can work, but a 7-card coupon order is typically much better. That's why I've liked the Lucky 7 style coupon structure I use. It encourages the buyer to build a cart, yet it keeps the order size manageable. It tends to stay within a shipping process that still works for me. That's the good version of the volume lane. Now, the second lane is the margin lane. I consider that the $4.99 and up inventory. These are the better singles, cards where I'm not depending on a coupon to make the buyer build a larger order. And the cards where one sale can create more profit without needing a stack of envelopes. Cards that may move slower, but make the business less dependent on daily order count. In that lane, well, it requires patience. And it requires better comping. It requires knowing when to wait, and requires being okay with slower velocity. It gives the business breathing room because the goal is not always more orders. Sometimes the goal is the same profit with fewer envelopes. And I think that's an important distinction. It's easy to chase sales count. And it feels really good to say, I shipped 50 orders today. But what did those 50 orders actually produce? How long did they take? How much margin was left? How much stress did they create? And how many mistakes did they invite? How much did they pull from tomorrow's energy? And that's not a reason to avoid volume. It's a reason to better understand volume. Low-end selling works when the system is built for low-end selling. Otherwise, it becomes a treadmill. And if the seller is constantly tired, always feels behind, and constantly complaining about shipping, and constantly needing more orders just to keep the numbers up, then maybe the answer is not simply more sales. Maybe the answer here is better balance. More margin, better systems, cleaner inventory, and more repeatable processes. And getting to fewer tiny little decisions eating away at the business. This past time period between episodes gave me a pretty good real life example of both sides of that product mix I referenced. We started the week with episode 33 going live, and that episode seemed to trigger some emotions, especially around the live selling discussion. But the card business itself was pretty normal to start that period off. I had a 9 card coupon order come through, and that's exactly the kind of orders I want from the low end value lane. Not one tiny card by itself, not a single envelope for a few cents of profit. A buyer built a cart, 9 cards moved together. The coupon did exactly what it was supposed to do. I also had a new batch of SI for Kids tear out cards starting to move. It's another example of low end inventory that can work if it's handled correctly. It's not necessarily glamorous inventory, and it's not the kind of thing that makes people stop scrolling and say, look at this monster card. But it has buyers, it has names that people search for, and it has a collectible lane. And when it's bought right and listed efficiently, it can become productive inventory. And I started off with a modest amount of listing early in the week as well. Nothing heroic, nothing dramatic, just enough activity to keep things moving. And that's part of the system as well. Not every day has to be a giant listing day. Sometimes the goal is just to keep the machine warm. Then, later in the week, it showed the other side. We had a stinker day where we only sold one item, and that was it. It was the second low sales day of the week, actually, which is rare for me these days, fortunately. When that happens, it's tempting to start building a whole theory around it. Is the store broken? Is the algorithm mad? Did something change? Do I need to panic? In this case, I did notice some new elements added to the eBay app. So maybe there was some platform maintenance or testing happening. Maybe that affected things. Maybe it didn't. I also did very little listing that day because of some other commitments. So there were multiple possible factors. But the main lesson is this: one slow day is information. It's not automatically a diagnosis. That matters because sellers can make bad decisions when they overreact to one bad day. They can slash prices too aggressively, or they can change too many things at once. They can totally abandon a strategy that was working because one day felt ugly. I had an ugly day, and the next day was right back to normal. Sales returned. SI for Kids items continued to move. I had some nice quantity card sales of Shohei Ohtani. Those were Ohtani cards that came from a full box buy from a dealer at a show. The box was heavily filled with Ohtani and Aaron Judge base cards when I looked through it. They made a deal for the entire monster box. That's one of those buys that fits the low end model well. It's not just random bulk, it's quantity around names that buyers actually search for. Look, Ohtani base is not rare, but Ohtani's demand is real. Aaron Judge base is not rare, but Judge demand is real. If the buy-in is right, that kind of inventory can feed the store for a long time. And it also creates one of the best versions of low-end listing. List a card, sell a copy, relist from duplicates, sell another copy, relist again. That's exactly what happened later in the week with Jackson Smith and Jigba. At the last GOAT card show, I bought a JSN lot with key quantity duplicates from one of my favorite dealers. One of the cards was a 2023 Donruss rated rookie base of JSN. Started off asking $1.99 on these, and a couple copies sold. So I moved up the price to $2.25, and they kept selling a few copies. Every couple days, another one moves, and when it does, I pull out another copy from the duplicates and list that one as well. That's the dream version of low-end inventory. Not because it's going to make anyone rich by itself, but because it's repeatable. The buying decision was made once, the listing structure was made once, the market's shown there's demand, and now the duplicates can keep stepping into the system. That's a very different feeling than randomly listing one low-end card at a time with no plan. As I got to that first weekend, it also showed the volume lane working. I had 3 separate multi-card coupon orders, one for 7 cards, one for 8 cards, one for 11 cards. That's exactly the kind of behavior the coupon is supposed to encourage. So I had some basketball and soccer move, which honestly are not always my strongest categories. A repeat buyer continued buying up boxing cards, and those JSN copies kept doing their thing. Again, none of this is individually earth-shattering. A 7-card coupon order on its own is not a headline. Neither is a soccer card moving. A repeat buyer picking up some boxing cards, that's not a headline either. And a 225 JSN card is not a headline by itself. But together, they show the low-end lane functioning. Bought right, listed efficiently, moved through repeatable systems, supported by coupons. And ideally, packed without turning the night into chaos. That's the good side of low-end volume. But then I had a day that gave me the other side of the product mix. It looked like a normal day. Normal listing, normal sales, nothing too wild. Then, right as I was preparing to call it a day, which is typically when this occurs, a big card I was selling on consignment sold for me. It was a 2025 Topps Chrome Cosmic Bobby Witt Jr. Stars in the Night Red Flare Parallel, serial numbered out of 5. I had listed the card high to begin with a few months ago at $24.99, $2,499. It had been sitting for a few months. When I listed it, the spring training season was just getting started. There wasn't too much excitement yet about individual player performance. And I knew it would take a little while for the market to heat up. During that time, I did field some decent offers. $750, $1,500 were some of the offers that I picked up over that time. But I knew that wasn't my mark. And eventually, the final buyer came through with a $1,999 offer. I talked to the card owner. We agreed this is the right number for this card. And we made that sale, and I took a tidy cut from making that sale. The card owner told me that they probably would have accepted that lowest $750 offer if not for the professional negotiation assistance I was able to provide. They would have got that little dopamine hit at that first $750 offer and said, got it, let's do it. But I knew there was more there. Bobby Witt Jr. is a budding superstar. Just had to wait for that right moment in the season for things to heat up a little bit. And if you haven't seen a red flare parallel of the Topps Chrome Cosmic Stars in the Night card, you need to take a look, because that card is truly a work of art. Certain cards just get the right combination of qualities, and this was one. So while I started listing high, I knew that I would be able to get close to $2,000 for that card. And it was just a matter of how long does it take to find the right buyer that sees the same qualities that I see. So this transaction felt really good. Not just because I made a nice cut from the sale. It felt good because it showed the value of process, patience, and positioning. With a card like that, the work is different. It's not about packing 60 envelopes quickly. It's not about creating a coupon order. And it's not about turning bulk into small, repeatable sales. It is about understanding scarcity. It's about knowing the range and recognizing that the first serious offer is not always the right offer. It's about being willing to wait when the card justifies waiting. And sometimes the value you provide is not just finding the buyer. Sometimes the value you provide is keeping the seller from saying yes too soon. And that's a very different lane in my business. Now, I'm not saying that I'm suddenly becoming a high-end consignment house. That's not the point. This was a pretty specific case with someone that I see on a regular basis and I consider a friend, who didn't have the tools to make the sale themselves, but knew I did, right? The point here is that in the same relative time period, I had low-end coupon orders and a 1999 consignment sale. That's the product mix lesson in real time. The low-end lane creates daily movement. The margin lane creates breathing room. The volume lane keeps the store active. The bigger card lane reminds you that not every dollar has to come from another envelope. And the better that balance gets, the less pressure there is on any one part of the business to carry everything else. That's also why I keep coming back to the team sorting project. On the surface, sorting liquidation boxes by team is not that interesting. It's just work. It's boxes, stacks, teams, and time. But strategically, I think it matters. First, it helps with customer experience. If someone buys Yankees cards, and I can quickly add a couple extra Yankees cards to that order, that is better than grabbing random filler. If someone buys Bears cards and I can grab a Bears freebie, that feels intentional. If a repeat buyer likes boxing and I have boxing extras sorted where I can find them, that also creates a better experience. The key phrase there is where I can find them. Because inventory you technically own but can't efficiently access is not as useful as it feels. Second, it helps with future selling formats. I don't know exactly what my live selling future looks like yet. I already sell buy it now on Whatnot, and I have the equipment and inventory, and I have thousands of listings I could potentially pull from, and I have backstock across baseball, football, basketball, Star Wars, and other non-sport categories. But the question is not just, can I go live? Of course I can go live. The real question is, can I go live in a way that fits the business? Can I go live without creating chaos in the business? Can I go live with inventory that's sorted, accessible, and easy to work through? Can I handle buyer requests? Can I fulfill efficiently afterwards? Can the stream create profit without turning the next day into a mess? And that's why the prep matters. The stream starts well before the camera turns on. And that applies even beyond live selling. The sale starts before the buyer checks out. The shipping process starts before the order comes in. The customer experience starts before the freebie goes in the envelope. The margin starts before the card is even listed. It starts when the inventory is sourced. It starts when the product mix is chosen. And it starts when the system is built. That's the part of the business I think people underestimate. Everyone wants the sale. Everyone wants the big number. And everyone wants the screen full of orders. But if the back end is not ready, the sale becomes stress. And if the product mix is not balanced, the stress becomes the business model. And that's what I want to avoid. I'm not trying to build a business that only works when I grind myself down every night. I'm trying to build a business where the volume lane works because it's efficient and the margin lane works because it gives the business room to breathe. It's not perfect yet, and it's still a work in progress. But that is the direction for my business. So the lesson this week is not that low-end selling is bad. And it's not that volume is bad. It's also not that every seller needs to chase bigger cards. And it's not that I have everything figured out. I certainly do not. The lesson is that the system has to match the strategy. If you want to sell low-end cards at volume, fulfillment has to be fast. Inventory has to be findable. Packing has to be repeatable. Supplies have to be ready, and every extra decision has to be removed wherever possible. But if the system cannot support that much volume, then the answer might not be pushing for more orders. The answer might be improving the process, or adding more margin, or building a better balance between the volume lane and the margin lane. This past period between episodes had a little bit of everything. Coupon orders, SI for Kids cards moving, Otani quality sales, a bad sales day, repeat buyers, Jackson Smith and Jigba duplicates that keep selling, a team sorting project, and one big Bobby Witt Jr. consignment win. Different pieces, same lesson. More orders are not always the answer. Sometimes better systems and better product mix are. Until next time, I hope you too keep building your own so-called card life.